There's a camera out there that's even better than the Contax G2, and it only costs 250 Aussie dollary-doos, which is 150 freedom bucks. So yes, while you might not be able to buy an actual G2 for $250, you can buy a replacement that's actually a whole lot better for 1/10 of the price. So what is this premium top-of-the-line point and shoot? Well, I'm glad you asked. Both start with C. Both have a letter and a number in the model name. It's the Canon 7S. Both offer auto exposure, auto loading, auto film advance, and rewind. It's also called the Elon 7NE in America and the EOS 30V in Europe. Both have back button focus and both have TTL metering for both flash and ambient light photography. But that is where the similarities end. Well, not really. There's heaps more. The Contax G2 was made in Japan. The Canon 7 was made in Japan. The Contax was made from 1996 till 2003. The original Canon 7, which this isn't, started production in the year 2000. And then the upgraded 7S, which is what this is, started production in the year 2004. So almost a decade after the first Contax G2 was made, the first 7S was made. And you know how quickly technology advances? There's a lot of upgraded tech that goes into this beyond even what the specs can tell you. So all of these upgraded Canon 7S were produced a full year after the last Contax G2 was ever produced. Now, one final point. The upgraded versions were produced in Taiwan instead of Japan. So the original 7, Japan. The upgraded version, the 7S, which came in 2004, was made in Taiwan. Now, apart from some forum snobbery around made in Japan versus made in China, the build between the 7 and the 7S, you can't tell the difference at all. They're both immaculate. Build quality. The Contax, it's an absolute tank made out of titanium alloy, and tanks are great if you know how to service them, which in terms of the Contax G2, no one does. Exaggerating a little bit, but basically no one does. According to the Bible from Ken Rockwell, rangefinders need constant service. The rangefinder mechanism is a delicate mechanical instrument. Even with a Leica, it will need to be adjusted for optimum results every so often. So while the first roll that you put through your Contax G2 might blow your socks off, you've got to remember it could be almost 30 years old at this point. So if you're lucky enough to shoot a few hundred rolls through your brand new, secondhand, almost 30 years old Contax G2 and it doesn't fry all its electronics on you, then good luck trying to find someone that can actually service the thing. The Canon, on the other hand, it has metal where it counts. It is, according to this amazing review, essentially just a plastic fantastic camera of fiberglass reinforced polycarbonate, but the black anodized aluminium body plates give it added rigidity and durability. There's also other metal where it counts, so in the pressure plate and the lens mount. So to me, it feels really light, but also just really strong and ready to go. All right, so the Contax is powered by two CR2 batteries. The Canon is powered by two CR123 batteries. So a slight size difference there. Now, they both cost about the same. What do you think about that? Don't lick them. Don't lick them. So they both cost about the same, but the CR2s are actually a bit harder to come by. And while they have the same voltage, so they're both 3 volts, there's actually a higher capacity in the CR123, so it lasts longer. On two brand new CR2 batteries, the Contax can get 80 rolls of 24 exposure film. On two brand new CR123s, the Canon 7S can shoot 120 rolls of 24 exposure film. So that's over a 50% increase in output between the two. So way more bang for your battery buck on the Canon 7S versus the Contax G2. Flash and shutter speeds. The Contax has shutter speeds from 16 seconds all the way up to 1/6000th of a second. The Canon 7S has shutter speeds from 30 seconds for long exposures all the way up to 1/4000th of a second. So just pipped by the Contax, but who needs faster than 1/4000th of a second, honestly? The Canon has an inbuilt flash, ready to go whenever you need it. Flick it up, flick it down, you're on. The Contax, you have to buy the flash separately for $600. You obviously then have to carry the flash with you everywhere you go, and then you have to clip it on. Oop, I didn't actually mean to make that look so hard. Clip it on, lock it in place, turn it on, wait for it to charge and sync, and then you're ready to catch your decisive moment. The other thing is, it's not powered by the body, so you need another 2 CR2 batteries, which are, again, hard to come by, expensive, heavy. The other thing is that I sort of just mentioned that the Contax body and the flash don't talk to each other. So you've got to make sure you turn your flash on when you want to use it, because if you don't, your photo's ruined. And then you've got to also remember to turn it off, because if you don't, this little light on the back and just the way it's built, it will drain your batteries. All right, so onto the weight. We have the Contax body is 605.5 grams. The Canon body is 580 grams. Now, a 28mm lens for the Contax is 150 grams, whereas the 28mm lens for the Canon is 185 grams. Now, the flash for the Canon, obviously, that's included, so 0 grams. The flash for the Contax is another 90 grams. Batteries, with this setup, you need 4 CR2 batteries weighing in at 17 grams a piece, so a total of 68 grams, whereas on this beast, 2 CR123 batteries only weigh 34 grams. So with a roll of film being 28 grams, TLDR, Contax is a total of 942 grams, and then the Canon comes in at a total of 827 grams. So it's a pretty big difference, 115 grams. And you really notice that sort of weight, especially if you're carrying it around on your neck all day, which, let's be honest, no one is doing that with a Contax, because if you leave it in the sun for a moment too long, the internals are going to fry. You're going to lose a significant portion of your net worth. And yes, I've done the whole weight comparison, including the flash on the Contax, because there's no way to remove the onboard flash, obviously, off the Canon. So I feel it's a fair comparison, but if you were looking at just the body of the Contax versus the whole setup for the 7S, then it's a difference of 8 grams. But for some reason, I don't know what it is, but this still feels heavier to me than the 7S. For some reason, I feel like it's still heavier somehow. Manual focus and range focusing. Manual focus on the Contax is notoriously bad. You got to use this weird little scrolly knob on the front. And as you adjust focus with this weird little knob, the set distance is displayed numerically on the top LCD. But it's been said, again by the Lord himself, Ken Rockwell, the manual focus bar graph is awful. It is not precise enough to work well. It was only added as a marketing tool. So if you want to range focus like all of your street photography icons out there, you're going to need the Canon. We've got our full manual focus ring up the top here. And speaking of, I just shot a bunch of rolls at Moomba Festival here in Melbourne, and I was trying to range focus with the Canon for the first time ever and using the onboard flash. So if that interests you, hit like, hit subscribe. The algo loves it. And then the next video, which comes out in 2 weeks, is going to be all on the street, real world examples of photography with the 7S Elan. All right, Rangefinder Vs SLR, the age-old conundrum. Almost all of the benefits that people associate with rangefinders are really just in relation to mechanical rangefinders like a $10,000 Leica. They don't actually apply to a Contax G2. So what do I mean by that? Rangefinder cameras are smaller and lighter. See the previous section, that's a fail in comparison to the 7S. Rangefinder cameras are quieter. I'd say this is also a fail, although I can't prove it because my Contax G2 is now a brick. But I'd say that the noise that the Contax makes when it's advancing the film is probably about just as loud, if not louder, than the mirror flap on the Canon SLR. And when it comes to film rewind, the Contax G2, I think, because yeah, again, it's all metal and it was released 10 years before the upgraded 7S was released. It is so loud. It's embarrassingly loud when it rewinds film. It's this high-pitched scream and then it gets louder and more high-pitched right at the end. So it's like a I think that was actually a pretty good impression of it. But it literally reminds me of my coffee machine when it runs out of beans. So I don't know if you know that sound, but that's the sound it makes. I tried to find an example of it online, but I think they've all been scrubbed from the internet by big Contax. Now the 7S, on the other hand, like I said, built 10 years after the first Contax G2 rolled off the lot. According to Canon themselves, it was specifically designed for users to shoot and change film even in situations requiring silence. So incorporating a transport system that features a state-of-the-art noise reduction design to ensure exceptionally quiet performance during film advance and film rewind. And this confused the hell out of me when I did my first roll through it. And I went to take another photo and it wouldn't take the photo, and my Contax G2 brick PTSD came back and I was having flashbacks because I looked at the LCD and it was blank and there was a little icon, which I then realized was the film roll flashing in the corner. And I realized, yeah, that the roll had just rewound and I didn't hear it, I didn't notice it, I didn't feel it. It blew my mind. So let's get into picture quality, which again, you know, Contax, it's been lauded as, you know, the most amazing glass and rangefinders because they come right back into the camera, they produce a better image, you know, far superior lens sharpness and blah, 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 blah. But I'll put up some pictures that I took on the Canon 7S with the cheapest lens that you can buy for it, the Plastic Fantastic Canon 50mm prime lens, EF, which you can get for about $50. They're so cheap. The whole setup is literally about $300 Australian. And the scans I got are the smallest scans that my lab does. And just, you know, aside from the pixel peepers out there, no one cares how pin sharp your pictures are, especially when the majority of people are just going to look at them online. All right, so when it comes to differences between a Canon 7S and the original Canon 7, there really isn't much in it. It's a slightly faster autofocus and slightly better TTL metering on the new upgraded 7S. The only other thing worth noting is, oh, you can see it. All right, so that's the only other thing worth mentioning, is you've got this enormous LCD backlit with this nostalgia-inducing Blue Moon LCD, which reminds me of an old G-Shock watch that I used to have when I was a kid. So amazing if you are doing those long exposures, night photography. But don't forget, so yes, obviously the original 7 was made in Japan, the 7S Taiwan. So if you want to be a snob, buy the original. You'll miss out on the Blue Moon LCD, but you'll be very cool. So what is the best camera in the world? The camera that you have with you. It does not matter how sharp your lens is if you're too scared to take your camera outside and take photos of it. Take photos with it, sorry. Buy a camera that you'll actually use, because that's what it's about, right? You're buying a camera. You want to take photos. So if you want a museum piece, go buy an old painting. If you want to actually take photos though, buy a cheap, ugly, old, but very capable camera and go out there and take some photos. You'll save so much money, and the rest of that money you can spend on film. I think the age of people paying the Kendall Jenner premium for Instagrammable cameras is over. Ugly fashion is back. People want to be comfortable, people want practicality, The more of them that you buy, the more of them that you break, the less supply that will be out there. And in another 10 years, we'll be able to sell our $250 cameras for $2,500. And then the Canon 7S Elan will be the hot new camera for all the Zendayas out there. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm not cool. Anyway, remember, like, subscribe. Next video, it's going to be all action on the street, taking photos. I'll get my rolls back next Wednesday, and I'll have the episode out the following Sunday. Cheers, bye.